this is Jasmine from Jasmine's Astrology, but you can call me Jay. And welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being here. For this very first video, I wanted to chat with you guys about the Astrology of March 2023. So, you probably already know this, whether it's from my work or other astrologers, but it bears repeating. March is a very big month for astrology. We have so many planets changing signs and just a ton of activity in terms of aspects. So let's dive in. First, we have Saturn changing signs heading into Pisces, where it hasn't been since the mid 1990s. And I actually did a really deep dive on this transit. And so there's an offering on my website for anyone that's more interested or interested in learning more. There will be links in the description below. We also have Pluto changing signs heading into Aquarius, where it hasn't been since the late 1700s. So that is a pretty big shift. And it will take a while for Pluto to kind of settle in to its transit in Aquarius, as it will retrograde back into Capricorn a couple of times before finally settling in late 2024. But the first few days of a planetary ingress usually give us some clues as to what the larger transit is going to be all about. Now, because Pluto is so slow moving, that might actually be the first few weeks as opposed to the first few days or even the first few months. And Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for about 3 months before heading back into Capricorn. So I would say those 3 months are a great time to pay attention to. I think we're going to get some clues and figure out, what having Pluto in that part of our chart is really going to feel like. I'm pretty pumped for this just from like an astro nerd level because ever since I started, paying attention to studying, practicing astrology, Pluto has been in Capricorn. It's been there since the beginning or somewhere in 2008 anyways. So that's a really long time. And I think for anybody that is interested in paying attention to these planetary cycles, this is going to be a really great learning opportunity. So I'm pumped about that. I'm also really pumped about the fact that Mars is finally getting the hell out of Gemini and wading into the waters of Cancer. Now, anybody that follows my podcast, The Stars Turn, will know that I am just so, so ready to be done with Mars in Gemini. Now, Mars in Cancer, it's not its favorite place to be. It's actually the sign of Mars's fall. So the planet can be, a little limited and restricted in terms of its expression. And when planets are in fall, they can bring a kind of like destabilizing quality to the cosmic energy. However, Mars also has what's known as triplicity rulership among the water signs, and Cancer is a water sign. So it's not totally without like a paddle while it's in Cancer. It's just that Mars likes to move direct and linearly. Like it likes to just kind of go for it. And in Cancer, in the sign of the crab, we're kind of moving this way and then we're moving this way and we're not moving completely ahead, in a straight line all the time. So, and not only that, I mean, water signs tend to just enjoy a slower pace. So, Mars is going to have to operate under a feelings first agenda while in Cancer. And we will likely see that our moods really impact our motivation and our energy levels. Now, for anyone that's been feeling the burnout of Mars and Gemini, this slower energy, I think, is going to be very soothing. Part of why I am so looking forward to it. For those of you already a little worried that productivity is just going to come to some kind of a halt, don't fret. Cancer is ruled by the moon, so there is a ton of movable quality, movable energy there. It's just that it changes its rhythms all the time, right? Like you can look up in the night sky and see the moon in a different phase, a different part of the sky every night. So there will be some days with Mars and Cancer where we have a lot of energy to move forward. And then there's going to be days where it's kind of more conducive to just rest or take a slower pace. So definitely just take advantage of those ebbs and flows as they arise. Mercury will also change signs twice throughout March, spending some time in Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries throughout the month. And then Venus will also head into her earthy home of Taurus around the middle of March. Now, on top of all of those sign changes, we have a lot going on in terms of aspects. The Sun and Mercury moving through the sign of Pisces are triggering all of these interactions with Neptune, Mars, Uranus, Pluto, and each other in various configurations. From March 14th to the 21st, there are 10 major aspects, 3 planets changing signs, and a new moon. So that is a week of just a lot of activity. Now, the large majority of these aspects include mutable sign interactions. So, allowing for some flexibility and changes within your schedule and regular day to day activities will probably be very helpful to navigate this like mutable madness in the middle of the month. And this will be especially helpful on March 16th and 17th, where most of that activity is clustered. At least for here in the Eastern time zone of Canada, there are 3 aspects on the 16th, 3 aspects on the 17th, and I believe Venus also changes signs on the 16th. So they're just 2 days of a lot of activity. And this week in general, it's particularly important, or it's going to be, pretty potent for you if you have planets, points, or angles at 25 or 26 degrees of the mutable sign. So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And that's because that's where, that's the area of the signs that the majority of this activity is taking place. So definitely take a look at your chart and see what might be activated by all of this activity. So the energy is going to shift a little bit towards the end of the month, actually, quite a lot towards the end of the month, once the Sun and Mercury head into Aries. And now the Sun moving into Aries will actually mark the spring equinox and the beginning of Aries season. And by then, Venus will already have ingressed into Taurus, again, one of her home signs, and sort of the opposite of Mars moving into the place of its fall, with Venus moving into one of her domiciles, that brings a very stabilizing quality to the cosmic energy. So that'll be nice to have, up against all of this mutable madness. Now, Venus will have to contend with a co presence and eventual conjunctions with both Uranus and the North Node, but she's been there and done that in this sign, last year and I think even the year before with Uranus. So I don't feel there's a huge call for concern around these aspects, especially since Venus is so happy and well resourced while in Taurus. So she's kind of calling the shots. Now, as always, we'll have a new and a full moon, and I'm going to talk more about each of those in upcoming videos. But for now, I do want to say the full moon in Virgo on the 7th is a great time for getting organized and looking to increase efficiency, particularly in, the Virgo area of your chart. Like, what are the topics and relationships that could use some tweaking and adjusting to make run a little bit better. It's also happening on the same day as Saturn moves into Pisces, just about an hour before. So there is something that's like very illuminating, or the full moon is like highlighting that Virgo Pisces axis in our charts and kind of, yeah, highlighting, illuminating the way for Saturn, but really bringing that Virgo Pisces axis into the spotlight, basically. And then the new moon in Aries on the 21st will be our final lunation before eclipse season. So, anybody out there that does sort of like regular lunar rituals and likes to set intentions around the new moon, this is a great new moon to do that. You'll want to take advantage. It is the first new moon after Aries season and the spring equinox. And so, of course, the beginning of the astrological new year. So, there's all these really beautiful signatures of fresh starts and new beginnings, and it'll be nice to be able to do the rituals and stuff before we head into eclipse season. Now, for my money, I think the trickiest aspect this month is actually wrapping up a series of squares that have been happening between Mars in Gemini and Neptune in Pisces since late 2022. Now, the first iteration of that happened on October 19th, 2022, while Mars was moving direct. The second on November 19th, 2022, while Mars was retrograde. And now the third and final pass will happen on March 14th, 2023, with Mars now moving direct again. Mars has me parched. You'll have to excuse me. So, the overall vibe of a Mars Neptune square can be quite lethargic. Neptune can really dampen the drive of Mars. It's kind of like trying to start a fire when all your firewood is waterlogged. Like there's no real impetus there. Neptune also tends to confuse and fog up the facts, which is extra not helpful while Mars is in Gemini, a sign where Mars is very motivated by data and details and logic. So Neptune kind of comes in and messes all that up. And it's definitely not a great time to plan anything that requires a lot of your energy or big decision making or, holding yourself accountable for hitting a whole bunch of productivity goals or something. The vibe is just really messy and a little frazzled. Now, if you don't really have much control over whether or not you have, a lot to do that week, just know that the activities will probably take a lot more out of you than is usual, and you might just need to schedule in a little bit of extra time for rest. Now, since this is the third meeting, the third and final meeting of Mars and Neptune, it does feel as though some kind of story is kind of coming to an end. Something we've been working on or trying to understand is reaching a conclusion. Now, if it's been harder for you in the past to not push up against that call for rest and flexibility in your schedule, in your routine, whatever, maybe this iteration will be the time when you're more proactive about that, proactive about taking the rest. Or maybe it's that you're finally seeing the line between the fact and fiction of something and you're ready to make the adjustments or you're ready to at least figure out what adjustments need to be made to move forward with more kind of confidence. But I do think that comes after the square happens. So the square is the muddled, lethargic kind of point, and then afterwards, it's like, oh, okay, that's what that was all kind of saying, and bringing the lessons around. Now, on a much lighter note, there are two favorable aspects I have my eye on for March. The first of which is Venus conjunct Jupiter, happening very early in the month, and something I'll talk about in an upcoming video. So stay tuned for that. The second is Mercury conjunct Jupiter, which happens on the 28th and brings the potential for very positive developments. This is when, details and data, which is Mercury, combine with big picture concepts, Jupiter. And we get a better idea of how the two of those things or all of those things can kind of combine and work better together. Now, with Mercury and Aries, with Mercury and Aries, our communication is a lot bolder and more expressive. So we do run the risk of saying something we might regret. So we definitely want to try our best to think before we speak. So, however, Jupiter can bring a little bit of wisdom, support, and even some luck to the mix, helping to kind of smooth all of that out. Now, I'm not saying you should just go and run your mouth on that day because it's all going to be totally fine. But, you might be rewarded for speaking your mind about something. Like if a situation you come across needs a bold idea to really get it moving, I would say don't be afraid to present it. There's a very best case scenario kind of thinking with this aspect. So I think it's a good day for making things happen. Now, finally, I do want to go back to the sun moving into Aries, which brings with it the equinox, spring for the northern hemisphere and autumn for the southern, and the start of the astrological new year. So, March always has this quality of energetic reset as we begin these new seasonal cycles. But this year, it all feels so much more pronounced with the major planetary sign changes. Of course, it remains to be seen on how all of these changes will manifest, and your mileage will definitely vary depending on how you respond to change. One thing is for sure, though, the energy that we are experiencing as we begin the month of March will be, significantly different than the energy we are feeling as we leave the month. priorities, our perspectives, our energy levels are going to be shifting and changing. So just, be aware of that, be ready for it. And personally, even though I don't love change, I am really looking forward to shaking things up and getting out of certain ruts and certain, stagnant routines. Even if more challenges lie ahead, which obviously they always do in some aspect of life, right? But I think it'll be nice to just have different challenges, different things to navigate through and learn from. And honestly, the month gets off to such a bright and energizing start with that Venus Jupiter conjunction. So I have a good feeling. And hopefully, this isn't one of those moments where, like, the narrator of my life interjects with, it wasn't, in fact, a very bright and energizing start. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and definitely stay tuned for more of that Venus Jupiter conjunction. I will chat about it more in a few days. But that's all I've got for the overview for the month of March. Now, if you'd like a calendar that has all of the major aspects of the month of March, so you can, pay attention to what's going on and have an idea of what's coming up, there's a link in the description below where you can sign up for my newsletter and get a free copy of that calendar. It will have the aspects based on the Eastern time zone here in Canada, so you may have to adjust it a little bit for wherever you are. But yeah, it'll have everything there for you. And thank you so much for watching. Maybe like the video or subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. If you made it this far, I feel like you probably enjoyed it, and I will thank you again for watching. Until we talk again, I'll catch you in the cosmos.